Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my videos. So for this one, I actually took quite a while trying to figure out which character I had wanted to sculpt next. If you haven't seen my last video, I sculpted the clicker from the show and video game The Last of Us. I'll leave the link up somewhere in one of these corners so that you can check it out. But that sculpt was actually probably the high point, probably my most favorite edible dessert I've ever made. And so I really wanted to be careful about what I made next because I don't want it to fall flat in any way, and it's just like a lot of like insecurity and a lot of pressure that I put on myself in general. But I had a couple of ideas in mind and I finally landed on the Lich from the TV show Adventure Time. Adventure Time is probably my most favorite cartoon series of all time. By the way, if you can hear that water, it's my pet's water fountain, sorry about that. But Adventure Time, it's like this brutal, intense show meant for adults dressed in sheep's clothing. If you've ever seen it for like a couple of episodes, you totally understand what I'm saying. At times, there'll just be these character designs that pop up that are really nightmare-inducing, and I feel like if I saw them as a kid, I would be pretty traumatized. I actually did do a cake sculpture of another villain from Adventure Time, or I don't know if you call him a villain, but like an evil entity called Golb. That's another video that you should check out, and I'll leave the link somewhere up here as well. But yes, another one of those nightmare-inducing characters is the Lich. So I looked up his description on like an Adventure Time fandom wiki, and I was gonna try to explain it in my own words, but because it's such an intense couple of sentences, I thought I'd just read it off. But the Lich is an ancient cosmic being who is the manifestation of the inevitable death of all things. His essence was deposited on Earth millions of years before the start of the show via a catalyst comet, a comet that brings about change, but came into physical being near the end of the Mushroom War from a mutagenic bomb after he possessed a person who had been submerged in mutagenic waste. So just feel good all around, isn't it? There's no way I could have said that any better or more succinct, I feel. So let's just jump right into it. The video is already pretty late as it always is. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helped me out, and here we go. Here is the initial sketch that I had made. I was kind of going for like a zombie undead look. Kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of styles I found online, but I was pretty okay with it. Excuse the super crazy looking hair, but I have some time now and I want to hurry up and make all of my modeling chocolate. So as you saw, I have like a good number of colors I have to make, and it takes a while for them to kind of really set and cool down where I can actually work with them. So I kind of like doing it a day ahead. It's a pretty long process too. If you see my previous videos, you'll know it's tiring as well. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm basically showing here the step-by-step on how I make my modeling chocolate mix. As usual, I'm using meltables, and I buy these off of Michael's. Actually, I go in store to buy these because for some reason they're not as cheap online. And then I use light corn syrup to pretty much bind it together and make it moldable. I'm only showing the white chocolate in this case because I do this basically for every color I need. It's a pretty repetitive and pretty boring process. I used to let these store in bowls, but this is a hot tip if you're ever making this at home. I actually like to now store like the freshly made modeling chocolate that's still warm to the touch on big sheets of tin foil, aluminum foil, I find that it's much easier to handle. Like I kind of peel away the tin foil, which you'll see, instead of having to like really get into a bowl and try to take out chunks at a time, because it does get pretty hard. Like it does mold in your hand eventually, but when it's completely cooled down, it might as well be cement. So the colors are pretty simple upon first glance, but of course I'll be mixing some of these together, kind of like tinkering around till I get the shades that I want. I also had some extra modeling chocolate that I knew I didn't need to make because I had some already on hand. And here I am pretty much peeling away the aluminum foil from the modeling chocolate like I had mentioned previously. If I find that the color doesn't match particularly well, I'll also go in with a little food dye to kind of cheat my way there. So I'm building all sorts of different shades of colors. You know, he's a cartoon character. It doesn't seem like it would be such a tricky process or, you know, just so involved because he is a flat 2D character, but I kind of wanted to give him some extra life or extra death vibes in this case, and it does take a bit of work, but honestly I think it's really worth it in the end. And here are the final colors. The next step was making the armature portion. It doesn't have to look too pretty because in the end I will be covering the whole thing up in Rice Krispie and chocolate. And the rest of my materials, which is basically Rice Krispie treat. So my camera died and I had to take some footage with my phone, which is what I'm doing here. I skipped around a bit because I just was too impatient to wait for my camera battery to charge. But here's what the base I'll be building off of looks like in comparison to the sketch I had. Yeah, it looks kind of wild and kind of janky, but in times of insecurity, the best bet is just to not think so much about it, honestly. After the Rice Krispie treat is done, I'll then go in with a very thin layer of modeling chocolate I have on hand. This layer is not usually seen in like the final version of my sculpt. It's just so that I can cover the actual Rice Krispie and gives me a much cleaner base to work off of. So there's going to be like a lot of color blocking involved, and it's just going to look super crazy for the next few hours that I work on it. As with all of my projects, I feel like this step is the one that it fills me with the most doubt because it looks so bizarre and because it's not anywhere near what it would look like in the end. It really tests like your determination and motivation to finish it. And I will take a break after this step because I will feel discouraged, and that's the reality of it. I don't know how common that is with other people who decide to make like creative based things. I'll be watching TV shows a lot in the background, or movies or podcasts or whatever, but sometimes when I need that extra boost, I watch that sci-fi series Face Off. Not the John Travolta Nicolas Cage movie, as much as I love that movie. This is something completely different, but it's a reality show where people who can do visual makeup effects, things like prosthetics and molds and a lot of other things that I'm not very well versed in, compete to make mostly creatures, aliens, monsters, fairies, animals, just things that are usually popping up in like sci-fi fantasy genres. So of course this is a TV show that I'm super into, and everybody on it is so inspiring, and it always makes you think about like maybe I should have, started my whole venture into sculpting a little bit earlier so that I could be at the level of these other makeup effects artists. But then I also think, at least I'm working on it right now. Every tiny step really counts. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little deep with this, but this whole YouTube channel, me starting all these horror, sci-fi, nerdy cakes and dessert sculptures has been a big change in my life. Like, I had not done art for a long time up until this point, up until like last year, and all of a sudden I'm doing it all the time and it feels really good. So even if there are times where I feel a little down, I feel a little insecure or unaccomplished, at least I know I'm working on it, and it's better than doing none at all. And it might be harder some days than others, but I gotta give myself a pat in the back regardless, right? While I was rambling, you saw that I had pretty much laid down all of his hood or shroud or whatever you would call that, and I realized that I wasn't very happy with how it laid at the very top of his head. I didn't want him to look like the Virgin Mary. I kind of wanted to give him more of a lift so that it looked less feminine and more medieval. So I took off like the front part, like the bangs of the shawl, and then went in with just another layer of base, which is a really thick piece, so that when I lay the green shawl over it, it has much more of a lift than it originally did. I'm saying all that because he's gonna look extra crazy for these next steps. Next up was finally putting on more of the actual sculpted details that would really make up his look. This is the part where I get my groove back, and it's really fun. And I also made sure to really take my time with him. I wasn't 100% sure of the style that I was going for. Like I said, he's an amalgamation, a mishmash of whatever I found online that I was leaning towards. I know the clicker, not that I have like a billion followers or likes or anything like that, but people really liked the clicker that I made in the previous video. If you haven't seen it, I'm plugging it again. Please go and watch it because I'm really proud of that project. But people really liked it, and I didn't really want to let them down with like a shoddier sculpt following up that one. I wanted to be just as cool. Although the Lich is not as popular of a character, especially right now, compared to a clicker, I have like a really big love for his design, and so I wanted to do it justice. This is me working on his teeth. and this part was extra aggravating because it kept falling out, but of course I was too much of a coward and edited out all that out. Also, this is my Mr. Toad's mug from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and also the movie. And I love him so much. He's just giving like a really sassy moment all the time, and he just makes me smile. So he's currently my favorite mug. I really took my time with him, much longer than I usually do, because usually I tend to rush a lot of my art projects. I just want to get it done. I just want to see the final product. I'm so incredibly impatient. But with this guy, I was really resolute with like going in slow, getting it to look how I wanted it to look exactly. And I think the most important part of this, although I love his teeth, the most important part was probably like the shredded flesh around his lower face, which I'm working on right now. It has sort of a flowy look, but more so than that, it just looks really disturbing to see his flesh ripped away from his gums. So I just really made sure to take my time. I would even go back and edit some of the sculpt I had made previously. Like, I would think about it as I would fall asleep at night. How can I change it to look how I really want it to look? His eyes before had sort of a frown, right? Like his brow was furrowed into a frown. But when you look at the Lich, his eyes are very much rounded, kind of like a shocking wide-eyed look and not so much a frown, which I feel gives him more of like a creepy look. And I still wanted to keep that. Although I'm being influenced by all these other designs, I think what really makes the Lich are his shocked eyes and his torn away jaw. So I wanted to make sure that I got that right. After putting on the bangs of his shroud, I then went in with his horns, which is probably another crucial part of his design. I didn't want to put his horns in with the original armature I had sculpted because I was afraid that it wouldn't land right, like I wouldn't come out in the right spots when I came to finally sculpting it. And so I decided to put the wire in afterwards when like most of his head had already been completed. This is now my third attempt at doing horns, and they're really tricky. Trying to curve something and have the right proportions and make it look realistic is not an easy thing to do. I will say I'm getting better at it. Like I really struggled with it during the time I made Black Phillip, which is my black goat Satan dude cake. If you haven't seen that, that was one of my early ones. And then my Balrog, which is one of my most favorite things I've ever sculpted. So maybe I do have a thing for dudes with horns. I don't know. But yeah, this is my third set of horns. I'm not ever super excited to do them, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better with them. Now, while I was doing the details and smoothing it out and trying to look as seamless as possible, I realized that I needed to take the actual horns out of his head while I did the final detailing. It was just a lot easier to work with than trying to keep him on the head itself, because it was me just kind of like doing body contortions to try to get into the right crevice. So I would take out the horns from time to time to just pretty much hold them in my hands so that I can get the details in just like how I wanted them to. And here is what the cutoff horn looks like. Yeah, so he has one cutoff horn and one full like curved horn. When it came to actually reattaching the horns, I realized that they were very unstable, and that's because the Rice Krispie treat itself, there's a lot of like air pockets in it no matter how much you try to, condense the material. So the armature wire was pretty wobbly. I had to reinforce the openings of where the holes, like the horn hole inserts would be, if that makes any sense, so that they would stay stuck. And then the last piece I actually had to sculpt was his crown. If you look at the cartoon, his crown is a very simple design. I mean, like a lot of Adventure Time in general, the lines are very clean, and I know I wanted to do something a little bit different for my sculpt, and I immediately thought of the ring wraiths or Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. If you look at like their hands, just their weaponry, the mouth of Sauron, all that, even Sauron's helmet, you can tell that the metal looks very aged and worn and dark, and so I wanted to give the Lich the same effect. I thought I'd use like a hammered metal type of look for the texture, and I'm actually really happy with how that turned out. I just would lightly tap on the crown itself with this little rounded tool. Also, the points in the crown, I don't know what they're called, I'm sure they have a word for it. I wanted that to look more organic than perfect as well, just to give him that kind of twisted, there's something not right about this guy energy. Okay, so I keep saying like each individual part of him is what gives him his unique look, but I'm gonna have to say the same goes for his eyes. So it looks like he has hollow eyes with like little yellow irises that burn bright through them, and I didn't know how it would go at first, but I decided to use some food grade wire that's covered in paper, color that paper black with edible ink, and then put little bits of modeling chocolate at the ends to make those irises. And then the last and final step, and probably the most fun, even though I don't think I'm very good at it, is painting. I used food dye, as usual, because it is food grade. I pick colors based on whatever matches whatever I'm painting. So for his face, he has kind of like a teal aqua face, and I went in with green and black to give him more shading. For his horns, he had darker browns. For his crown, I went with black to give him more of a weathered look. But yeah, I feel like this is what really brings him to life, and it's just really fun and honestly not stressful at all. And here are the final results. The Lich from Adventure Time. And that was the Lich. I was pretty happy with how he turned out. I made sure to really take my time on him because I was a little bit nervous about how he would turn out. As you saw, I used a couple of references to kind of put my own spin on things. You know, not everything I sculpt has to be like a carbon copy of whatever was in the cartoon or movie or so on. So I was pretty happy with that, just to show people a different version of him. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to be working on next, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be fun as usual. So please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.